You're watching the #1 podcast in the YouTube wrestling community, and I'm your host, Jean-Paul Leek. And this is Rope Break, and we're going back old school here. This is just Jean-Paul solo today on the Monday Night Raw review. So I hope you're all doing well, family. And this Monday Night Raw, it actually wasn't a bad show. It was one of those, I always say, like the middle of the road Raws. But this one was actually more on the good side, maybe because we got a good main event that wasn't set up by the opening segment. And the opening segment itself was actually pretty good. Some people shit on it because, it's like, why bring back a guy for one night and bury him and then send him on his way? But I don't know. I thought it was good. I thought it told the story. But then we saw some stuff like a little more with, Tozawa and the Ninjas just randomly appearing in segments they don't belong. And, we saw some stuff tonight that it's like, But we also saw a new United States Championship, which I love the design. Again, a lot of people were shitting on it. So I don't know, but hey, we're going to get to it all right now. But before we do, I want to thank each and every one of all the new subscribers, old subscribers. Thank you guys for joining the channel. And we hope to, have more content. And we know that we're going to have that. And speaking of content, if you haven't already, before we begin, check out all last week's videos and reviews and everything. So let's get right into it. So this week's Raw kicks off with Drew McIntyre. He comes out to the ring, and he says that it doesn't matter what the stipulation Dolph chooses for tonight or for the horror show because he will beat him. And so Drew, he's like, Dolph, why don't you come on out and tell us what it's going to be? So Ziggler comes out and he says that everybody wants to hear what the stipulation will be for Extreme Rules. He says, but guess what? It's a secret. And he said that Drew made a mistake by letting him pick the stipulation, and now he won't find out until the match itself. And then McIntyre says it doesn't matter because he's the WWE champion, and Dolph says that they can compare resumes if he wants because Drew's had a pretty big gap in it. McIntyre says that he's tired of hearing it, he's proud of his comeback story, and he hopes that he inspires others. And then Dolph says that Drew didn't do it all himself, and he's left plenty of people by the wayside. And he's not just talking about himself. He says that, and then he's like, let me introduce somebody who you left out of your life. And I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know who this is going to be, to be honest. And then Heath Slater comes out. So that I popped for that. I mean, Heath Slater, man, he looks jacked. He looks in the best shape he's ever been. So that was cool. And it's one of those things where, maybe this will be a Drake Maverick story. No, reports are once and done. So he came out and he's like, hey, he gets in the ring and he says, Drew, hey, man, remember, like, we were in 3MB. He's like, they always said you were the chosen one and all this stuff. And he's like, I was sitting at home in April. He's like, I was watching you, Claymore, kicking Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania to win the championship. He's like, I was so happy, man. I was crying. He's like, I felt, pure joy from one of my brothers. And then he knows Drew loves him because when McIntyre was fired, he called him to see how he was. And he said they went to dinner together. And he's like, I did all this for you when you were released, Drew. He's like, but what did you do for me? And he's like, the last time we spoke was on the Bump. He's like, that's the only show I could get booked on, because he's like, I can't get on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, but I can get on the Bump. And Drew knows his two little girls, his actual kids. He's like, I don't have 22 kids or whatever the fans think I have. He's like, I have two little girls. And he's like, they're always pulling for me. They believe in me. And he's like, I can't let them down. And he said that on the Bump, Drew promised him a match. And he's like, I want this match. I want it now. And then he's like, like I said, he wants McIntyre to give him what he promised him. So McIntyre, he doesn't really look interested in this. Him and Slater start pushing. He's like, let's do this. Let's do this. And then Drew's like, you know what? He slaps him in the face. And then Drew's like, you know what? It's on. So then, of course, it goes to the commercial. And then when we come back, how do you think this was going to go? Do you think Drew was going to have the long contested match with Heath Slater? No, I love Heath Slater, but no. Boom, this thing starts. They start going at each other pretty much in street clothes. They're both in their pants. Ziggler gets involved. He distracts Drew. Heath backs him in the corner. Boom, he fights out of it. Claymore kick and done. So, this was quick. This was maybe twice the time that Christian and Randy Orton was, but pretty much told the same story. So then afterwards, McIntyre stares down Ziggler. After the match, he grabs his belt and he leaves. Ziggler gets in the ring and then starts berating Heath, shoving him. Then Heath shoves down Ziggler, but then Ziggler tackles him and starts to get the advantage. So McIntyre runs back, and then Ziggler, he runs out of there quick before Drew can get him. So then him and Slater, they're just kind of looking at each other. And Slater, he's all upset and emotional, kind of like, man, like, why'd I attack my best friend? Was this worth it? Blah, blah, blah. McIntyre helps him up. And then, they have a moment together. They embrace, they do the 3MB, legit, and that ends pretty much the first segment, I would call it, because that match wasn't really even a match itself. So I didn't mind his first segment. I know, Heath Slater cut a legit promo. I know Juan agreed with me with that. But like we said, once and done, unfortunately. But he's going to go off and do things and build the name on his own, because clearly WWE didn't want to use him. So, these guys do what they got to do. It's just a stepping stone to further the match at Extreme Rules. To me, I would be more interested if this was the match at Extreme Rules and he somehow told that story. Because Ziggler will put on a hell of a match, but, he's going to lose. So was it worth it to bring him in as a stepping stone? Like I said, I would have rather seen it be its own story. So, some people hated it. Some people loved it. But next, we get Sarah Schreiber. She's backstage with Sasha and Bayley. She asks them question, but Bayley interrupts her and says that they can just go talk to the world. So the tag team champs leave, but then Asuka appears behind Sarah, and then she asks Asuka, how can she cope with them by herself? And then she's like, I'm not alone, and then dances away. Because in the match was originally, they said, Kairi Sane will be here. And then they took her out of the image and it was just Asuka. So it was like, you didn't know what was up in the air. And like we shared on the channel, follow us on all social media. I'll plug that at the end as well. Kairi Sane, she's pretty much, done, relatively soon. Unfortunately, she's going to go back to Japan, maybe wrestle for a year or so, and then call it a career. At least that's what our plans are now. You know how people in the wrestling business, they always come out of retirement or their plans change. But, with Kairi Sane, I wouldn't put it past her if that's what she does. And if that is what she decides to do, that's good for her. So then when we come back from the commercial breaks, Bayley and Sasha are in the ring. And, they're talking to everybody. They said they need to get used to seeing them on all three shows now, because they're going to have all the gold. Bayley agrees. She's like, yeah, because we're going to beat Nikki Cross, or I'm going to beat Nikki Cross at Extreme Rules. And then Banks says that she's going to beat Asuka and become two belts Banks, and then they will own the women's division. Hey, I like them as heels, so I can't disagree with them. But do I think that Asuka is going to lose? No. They're making Asuka look like the most dominant woman, I'd say. Even if, people are like, oh, she loses and she does a little dance. It's like, yeah. But when the bell rings, you're not going to find me a woman more dominant than her, especially since the queen is out of here. So Asuka, and then she comes out and she mocks Sasha. Asuka says Bayley is not ready for her and Sasha is not ready for her friend. And then Bayley says that if Asuka has some great secret, she should just reveal it now, because Sasha is ready to face anyone. Then Asuka invites Kairi Sane out, and they make their way to the ring. So that was cool to see Kairi Sane. Like I said, we were kind of unsure if she was going to be there or not. So then we get Sasha Banks with obviously Bayley in her corner versus Kairi Sane with Asuka in her corner. So this match was actually pretty good. I liked it. Kairi Sane got some good offense in. I thought she looked good. But it was like, Sasha going to win? How are they going to do this? You hate to see Kairi Sane just get pinned again, because especially with all that Nia Jax bullshit, she had a lot of fans pulling for her. I was a big fan of hers ever since she came to NXT, and I saw how legit she was. So, we were all pulling for her as fans, and she actually had a good showing tonight, and she got the upper hand. So at the end of this thing, Kairi Sane stomps around the ring, runs, and then she hits that sliding forearm to Banks in the corner for a near fall. Banks counters Sane and hits a running Meteora for a 2 count. Banks then hits running knees in the corner and then goes up top, but misses a flying Meteora. And then Kairi applies the modified Boston Crab, and it looks like Banks is going to tap out. So then Bayley runs in, attacks her, causes the DQ. So then the winner of this thing is Kairi Sane by disqualification. So hey, I like this because it keeps Sasha looking strong because she didn't lose. Kairi looks good because she probably would have got the submission there. At least that's what the storyline would have said. Of course, it's really not a finisher, but that's the way it was looking. And then it keeps the heel heat for Bayley and Sasha. So After that, Asuka runs in the ring and she helps, or she gets overwhelmed by the tag champs. And then all three women, they start beating each other up. Kairi jumps off the top rope onto them with the insane elbow. And then we see a replay of last Monday when Seth Rollins beat Humberto and Aleister Black in the tag match and then tried to blind Humberto. Then the camera cuts backstage and we see Aleister Black pinned down under some metal rods wearing a Rey Mysterio mask. Seth and Murphy are there, and Seth says, "That's a damn shame." So clearly, hey, who did this to him? It was a Monday Night Messiah and his goon, Buddy Murphy. So they were supposed to see Aleister Black and Rey Mysterio in a tag match. So there goes the partner. So that's kind of setting up the suspense later in the night. I wonder who the partner is going to be. Is it going to be somebody exciting? Is it going to be like a new return? Or is it just going to be, hey, let's plug the one guy who was in this story. Let's, who was taken out, and let's plug him back in, the guy who's stuck in mediocrity, Kevin Owens. So then the commercial break, and then the Viking Raiders, they're backstage. They're practicing bowling when the Big Show appears, and he says that he loves to have some fun, but tonight's serious. And he says tonight they're going to be teaming against Randy Orton, Angel Garza, and Andrade. They say that they will have to take things seriously because they looked up to Edge and Christian, and, look what he did to them. And they, too, had the 5-second pose. So they pose, and Big Show slaps the shit out of them. And he's like, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? Like, I just said we got to be serious, and you're doing 5-second poses. Like, come on. So then Ivar, he gets mad at Eric, and then they start, kind of like, oh, look, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. And they start, like, getting all eyeing up each other. And it's like, all right, guys, you were legit. Can you stop being a comedy act, please? We already have one of those tag teams. We don't need two. So then Kevin Owens, he comes to the ring for the KO show. Okay, again, like I said, stuck in mediocrity. Either do something with this guy or get rid of him. This, like, bullshit, like, oh, I have a talk show one week, and then I'm like, oh, a badass promo. Oh, I'm Stone Cold the next week. And it's like, please do something with him or get rid of him. He says that before he gets started, he should just get rid of the set dressing. So he throws out the chairs out of the ring, and he says that his guest tonight is not someone you'd expect to see on the show. Considering their history, he induces a big piece of trash, Seth Rollins. And then Rollins comes down to the ring with Murphy, and Seth says that why KO removed the chairs, that he has no intention of getting physical. He thanks Owens and says that he's happy to be here. Seth asks how his fractured ankle is. The ankle KO injured at WrestleMania against him. Owens says it's all good, surely better than Seth's ego. Then Owens says they faced each other at WrestleMania, and they have a bond because of it. Wrestling at that show is what they strive towards. So when two people perform together, they form a bond. So he wants to commemorate it. And then he hands Seth a T-shirt that he wore that night, and Seth thanks him, but says he sees what they're trying to do. And he has news for him. He doesn't give a damn about him or his show. He only wants to come out to use him as a platform to address Rey Mysterio. Now that Rey is cleared to compete, he's formally challenging him to a match at Extreme Rules. It's time to make Rey a permanent sacrifice, but now that is out of the way, they can dredge up the past. He says things haven't been going so good for Owens since WrestleMania, having been injured and done very little while he rose to prominence. So then Rollins says that Owens might realize that he can get more fighting alongside him, fight for the greater good. It would give him purpose. Rey Mysterio comes out with Dominic, and he asks Seth if he really thinks Owens going to fall for this BS and for his challenge, and he accepts. So at Extreme Rules, Seth's destiny will be in his hands. And Seth says that he loves this, but what about tonight? Black is injured, so is Rey going to compete 2-on-1? Or maybe his boy can join him and lose his eye too. Owens interrupts and says that he will gladly fight by Rey Mysterio's side. And then Owens suggests that the winning team tonight gets to choose the stipulation at Extreme Rules. So Seth says they're on, and Buddy Murphy then comes to the ring, immediately attacks Owens, and then, things go to commercial break. So then, like I said, we get Kevin Owens. He's plugged in for Aleister Black. Okay. We'll see how it goes. Or I actually thought that Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy were going to win this thing. We got Kevin Owens and Rey Mysterio winning. It was a decent-ish match. I mean, we saw all these guys feud multiple times. There really isn't anything crazy you can do. I mean, the craziest thing is what we saw at the end of this, or what the match that we're going to see at Extreme Rules, rather. Because at the end of this thing, Rollins and Murphy both get dropped onto the middle rope. but both slide out of the rings. Rollins then grabs Dominic from behind and starts backing up the ramp, but then out comes Aleister Black. Seth drops to his knees on the ramp, and then Murphy gets Ray back in the ring, but Dom rakes the eyes of Murphy and then sends him inside. Ray hits the 619 and the splash for the win. So like I said, the faces win here, and then after the match, Rey Mysterio gets on the microphone, and he says that he has a perfect stipulation for Extreme Rules. He says, and it'll be an eye for an eye, and he's willing to rip Seth's eye out with his bare hands. So I'm pretty sure we confirmed that on Rope Break. We said, oh, watch them do like an eye for an eye match, and now they did it. So, I mean, hey, if you're listening to WWE, you can send a little bit of royalties our way. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think that'll be something to make it interesting. Is Seth going to get his eye, whatever? Is Rey Mysterio going to lose? Rey Mysterio is, from what we've been hearing, is working on just probably like a handshake deal, you know, and a man's word, because he's not under contract anymore. So he might be doing this match and then done. Who knows? He could be, you know, they could be working out a deal, and he's like, yeah, I'll work for you while I'm not under contract while we work something out. Or like I said, he might be doing this just for his son's future and everything. So we'll see what happens with Rey Mysterio after Extreme Rules and his eye for an eye match. So then Charlie Caruso, she interviews MVP and Bobby Lashley. She talks to them about Apollo, but then Lashley says that he's crushed him and it won't be long before he loses his United States Championship. MVP says the future of the United States Championship can only be described as ballin'. So then we get commercial, and then when we come back, MVP and Lashley, they come to the ring where there's a new belt. It's obviously, you know, hidden under the cloth on the podium. And then MVP says that when Cruz came to WWE a while ago, he was shining bright, but he burned out quickly because he passed through their orbit. He says Cruz disrespected him, and by proxy, he disrespected Lashley. And when he beats Cruz at the horror show, at Extreme Rules, I apologize, he won't be the champion anymore, but he'll have the memories. MVP promises his next U.S. title run will be as good as his first two. And then he reveals the new United States Championship. And I love this belt. Again, like I said, a lot of people are shitting on it. They're like, this is awful. This is almost as bad as the Intercontinental Championship. I can understand not liking the Intercontinental Championship. I preferred the old design, but I still like the new design. But people are shitting on this belt, and they're like, oh, I want a belt that's like the Winged Eagle. This is as close as the Winged Eagle as you're going to get. You see what the WWE Championship looks like, right? You see how awful and shitty that looks. And the Universal Championship, this thing should be like what the fans were asking for. So you can't please some people. But anyway, he says that the new belt is befitting of a legend like him. Lashley says that they may as well make it official now. So then he goes to put the belt around MVP's waist, and Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, they come out. Cedric says that the belt is a prestige, but MVP should know better than anyone that titles are earned, not handed out. Ricochet says that Apollo will be back soon, but MVP hurt their friend, and they're here to make sure the Hurt Business goes to 11. They clear the ring as we head to a commercial break. All right, so then when we come back from commercial break, we get MVP Bobby Lashley versus Ricochet and Cedric Alexander. So, I mean, this match, again, it wasn't bad. Of course, you know, the heels were going to win this thing. You weren't going to have, you know, the upset with Ricochet and Cedric. I mean, they weren't necessarily buried. I feel like they're still involved in this storyline. I feel like there's still hope for my boys that they're going to pull through this bullshit and actually be used on this show. They did do that 365 special or whatever it was for Ricochet on the network. I didn't watch it because I'm like, it's not going to end in anything good for him. You know, it shows good stuff, but at the end of it, he's, you know, wrestling on main event. So, you know, there's not a light at the end of the tunnel, but, you know, I feel like there's hope for them. But in the end of this thing, like I said, you knew that they weren't going to win. Cedric, he hits a MVP with a flurry of punches and then drop kicks Lashley off the apron. Cedric then hits a tornado DDT for a near fall, but Lashley was the legal man, I guess. So he gets a blind tag. And then I didn't even see the tag, so that shows you how blind it was, you know. Maybe I got to readjust the glasses here. But then he spears Alexander, you know, crazy spear from Lashley. I think he's got one of the best spears in WWE right now for the win. So then the referee hands MVP his new United States Championship after the match, and they pose together. Lashley applies in the full Nelson to Cedric, but Ricochet drop kicks him in the head. So then he quick grabs Cedric, and they retreat out of the ring. And Ricochet, he's like, hey, this isn't over. This isn't over. So, like I said, hopefully there's some hope for my boys. So then we see Andrade with Garza backstage in Vega. Ric Flair comes up to him and he's like, hey, we were all great last week, but, this week, we got a 3 versus 3. We got to do this. We got to beat them. And then he's like, but, it's all about the big show. We got to beat them, like I said, and if we get in our way, we won't hesitate to introduce ourselves to the Legend Killer. And then Orton gives them a fist bump and leaves. And then we go to a commercial break. When we come back, Charlie Caruso, she's interviewing the Kabuki Warriors. They're speaking some Japanese back to her. And then Asuka says together that they are better than Banks and Bailey. So they challenge them to a title match next week. And then Kairi, she plays the flute. And she actually plays the Kabuki Warriors theme song on the flute. So that was pretty kick-ass. And then her and Asuka dance off. So now we get the Big Show and the Viking Raiders versus Randy Orton, Andrade, and Angel Garza. So, I mean, this match, I like it, again, the heels were going to win. What were the faces going to win? Big Show. We still didn't get no official announcement, at least that I saw, for Extreme Rules for Big Show and Randy Orton. Do I want to see that announced? No. Is it probably going to be? Yes. But, this thing, again, there was some more dissension. Garza, he was like, Andrade, like, dude, you're bullshit. I'm done with you. He left. Randy Orton got in his face. And he was like, he's like, dude, he's like, I will fucking end you. Like, you better get back on this apron. And like, we got to finish this match. And he was like, okay. Because they're all like, we're all third generation, wrestlers. Like, the business is definitely in our blood. Let's work together. Let's get this thing done. So then Big Show, he readies a choke slam, but Orton runs in and attempts an RKO, but gets shoved off. And then Orton taunts, Big Show from the outside of the ring, allowing Andrade to apply a sleeper. But then Big Show slings him off and then tags Ivar, who drops Andrade and tags in Eric. And then Andrade and Garza toss out Ivar, and then Orton RKO's Eric for the 1, 2, 3. Like I said, the heels were going to win. It was the right choice. Viking Raiders, I'm sorry, but you guys are done. You're just a comedy joke. It's all, Ivar is sexy. Eric is a nerd. You guys are losers. Big Show, hey, Big Show's Big Show. Then the Iconics, they're backstage, and they're pretty much, they're like, oh, we can't wait to see, Ruby Riott get her ass kicked tonight. And they're like, oh, her tattoos are ugly. She has no friends, blah, blah, blah. Just typical bullshit, calling her out. She comes out of nowhere. She's like, yeah, I did try to talk to Liv, but, I'm not worried about that tonight. And then she's like, I'm just worried about kicking your asses tonight. She's like, and it won't be iconic. It'll be tragic. So, okay. Again, like, she's cutting a promo, but is she going to win? Clearly not. Like we said, this is all setting up for her to lose to both of them. Liv's going to come up. They're both going to be like, so, and then they're going to form a tag team, and we're just going to go back to, putting them together because WWE doesn't know how to book Ruby or Liv in a singles role. So then backstage, MVP's with Cedric, and he says that he's got some questions for him. He says it takes a lot of heart to stand up to him and Lashley, and he's impressed by him. MVP and Cedric, our MVP says Cedric is holding himself back by being with Ricochet. Cedric's like, listen, man, I know what you're trying to do. You're just trying to stir the pot. You're just trying to get me, to cause tension between me and Ricochet and Apollo, and you're trying to get me, divide and conquer. It's not going to work. And he's like, hey, man, if you just want to play second fiddle and you be Ricochet's sidekick your whole life, he's like, yep, there it is. There it is. Like, you're just trying to make me, think that Ricochet's trying to screw me over. Nope. So then he's like, I'm done with this. So then we go to commercial break. Then when we come back, Ric Flair is backstage with Orton, and then he's running down his accomplishments and all this stuff. R-Truth comes in. He's like, hey, he's looking around. He bumps into Ric Flair. He looks at him, and Ric Flair's just staring a hole right through him. And I thought Ric Flair was honestly going to roll him up 1, 2, 3, be the new 24/7 champion. I was like, please, God, no. So he goes, hey, for the dirtiest player in the game, you clean up pretty well. Tozawa. So he thought he was Tozawa in disguise. He hears the ninjas running with Tozawa. He's like, oh, shit, 2 Tozawas. So he takes off. He runs, left or right, whatever direction he runs. Technically, they're left, my right. And then Tozawa comes, and they're like, oh, because they're all like scared shitless of Randy Orton, and they're like, oh, did you see our truth? And then Orton kind of looks and he's like, he went that way, and he points straight ahead. So then they run. So he actually, saved our truth there. So that was pretty cool. And then we get the match that was talked about a little earlier, Ruby Riott versus Billie Kay. Of course, Peyton Royce was on the outside. Like I said, WWE is really not that hard to predict. Ruby drills Billie Kay with a right hand and then hits a back elbow and slams Kay onto the buckles, but Royce causes a distraction, allowing Billie Kay to punch her in the throat and then hit a boot to the face, and then Kay hits a power bomb for the win. It was a power bomb, but you kind of just mostly slammed her on her ass and her tailbone. I mean, I guess that would hurt, but I feel like you'd still be able to kick out your shoulders and your upper body, even if your, lower body was hurt. But hey, I don't know. So then afterwards, Charlie interviews Bayley and Sasha Banks and asks them about the challenge put forth by Asuka and Kairi. And Sasha says that they accept because it'll make them realize that they'll never be champions again. Again, causing the tension because Bayley looks at her like, what the hell are you doing? And then she's like, hey, don't worry about it. She will prove tonight that she's the best champion in WWE when she defeats Asuka. So then we go to commercial break, and then we get Nikki Cross. She makes her entrance because she's joining the commentary team. I love Nikki Cross in the ring, but please, God, Nikki, I know it's your gimmick. I know it's your character. I'm sure you're a sweetheart in real life, but tone it down a little bit. It's a little annoying on commentary. It's like, oh, when they actually got rid of her, I was like, thank God. But so we go to the main event. Here we are, Kairi Sane, Asuka with Kairi Sane versus Bayley and Sasha Banks. So this is the champion versus champion. They've been doing this a lot lately. It's cool when you do it at like a Survivor Series, or if it was like we didn't see Bayley and Sasha on every show because it didn't feel special. The match itself, the quality of it, I thought it could have easily been on a pay-per-view. This was a good match. Maybe take out some of the interferences and this and that, but the match was really good. We got Sasha Banks kind of getting involved here and there. Kairi Sane didn't do much because she was playing complete babyface. She knew, I don't want to get involved and cost Asuka the match. Like I said, Nikki Cross was on commentary. Bayley was getting in her face. She actually was going after Bayley, and security had to take her out of there. But the one thing that really helped this match, like I said, it was besides the fact it was really good, is they gave them time and it told the story. Asuka was clearly, she was getting beat down. It was kind of overcoming the numbers. Like I said, Kairi didn't want to cost her the match to get involved. But, towards the end of this thing, Asuka kicks Bayley and then hits a missile drop kick from the top rope for a near fall. Asuka gets knocked down from the top rope to the floor, and then Bayley drills her with a knee against the barricade. And then Bayley puts her back in the ring, but takes a minute to cheap shot Kairi. And then the referee deals with Kairi. Because like I said, it was almost like Kairi was, every time she was getting provoked because she didn't want to do anything, the ref would be like, hey, you can't do this. And then Sasha Banks is, of course, getting away with everything. So, they were playing that game. And then Banks hits Asuka, and Bayley lands a slide and a suplex for a near fall. And then Banks runs over to the announce table and grabs a bottle of water. Bayley takes a drink, and then she throws some of the water in Asuka's face. And then Nikki, she's on the barricade, boom, 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 slamming on the plexiglass. And then Bayley starts freaking out. She's like, what the hell? So Asuka grabs her, drags her into the ring for the Asuka lock, but Banks runs in, but she gets speared by Kairi Sane. And then Bayley rolls backwards, but then Asuka counters it into a roll-up for the win. So it was kind of like some roll-up attempts, but then, like I said, Asuka gets the upper hand here. She gets the win in a hard-fought match. And I remembered earlier, Bayley ate a spinning back fist that, this fucking thing knocked her into Extreme Rules. This knocked 2 weeks in the future. Like, you got to find this, man. She got clobbered by this. Asuka even, I think, at some point looked at her and like nodded her head, like it was kind of like, you good? Like, I'm like, are you good? Like, whatever. Like, I'll take my receipt, knock me in the face. Cause she freaking knocked her out. But like, Asuka was the winner here, the right woman to win this thing. This just sets up perfectly now for the match at, next week for the tag team champions. I don't see them losing, as in the Golden Role Models, Bayley and Banks. I don't see them losing that match. I think if they win, then it's like, it keeps the heat building for Extreme Rules. But that was Monday Night Raw. It was a show that, again, had a lot of segments in. SmackDown was way easier to digest, only the 6 segments. This felt like boom, boom, boom. It was like every time, there was a new segment, it was like, oh, a little interview here, little interview there. It was a lot to kind of pay attention to, which I think kind of hurts the shows. But, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this that was actually pretty good, like I said. The only thing that was a little funny was maybe some of the stuff with the Viking Raiders, Big Show, okay, Adaaaaa. But I actually like the stuff with Cedric and MVP and Ricochet, Lashley. I'm enjoying that. Kevin Owens, like I said, I'm getting a little sour on him because, they're not doing anything with him. And Aleister Black, I think he is – I'm scared that he's going to fall into that role as well, where I'm going to see this guy in 6, 7, 8, 9 months from now, and he's going to be in the same spot. And I'm going to be like, okay, I'm starting to really lose interest in you, which I hope isn't the case. But anyway, that was Monday Night Raw. And like I said, it was a pretty decent show. And do I think Extreme Rules is going to be a good pay-per-view? We still got another week to build it. Do I think they're going to do anything to really make the show exciting? Probably not, but we're going to cover it anyway here on the channel because that's what we do. So guys, speaking of all the coverage, follow us on Facebook, The Original Rope Break, The Original Rope Break on Instagram, The OG Rope Break on Twitter, and The Original Rope Break right here on YouTube. Click subscribe if you haven't already. And don't worry, Juan will be back soon. This was just only a temporary thing. I like when he's here. I don't like doing these by myself. No, I don't mind, but, it's always more fun when it's the both of us. So, guys, thank you all for watching. Like I said, follow us on all the social media. Make sure you click subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time.